Is it a good time? All right, let's see why. Why is it possibly a good time? I think it's a good time. I think it's a great time. I think it's the perfect time. I think it's now is more a perfect time than any. I tell you when it wasn't a perfect time in 2021. Now, some of you may be thinking, how wasn't a perfect time? The money was up, and that's why so many people failed because they didn't know what the heck they was doing. They didn't know what they was in. They didn't know what they was investing in. They fell victim to being a bandwagon subscriber. You know what I'm saying? Not doing their own due diligence. And depending on what time they entered into the industry during that tenure of the pandemic would determine their outcome, because you could have entered in at the point where inflation kicked in and there's no way that you possibly would have been able to sustain. If you got in during the beginning part when entry was not as bad, then yes. But if you got in when entry was high, then that might have been the time where you wanted to wait. Now is the perfect time. Why? Demand is still there. Demand is there. It's not what you saw during the pandemic, but there is demand there. It's just different. Demand is there, it's just different. Now, what do you mean, Mark? Demand is there, but it's just different. Da da da. Man, rates are down, man. Oversaturation, da da da. Specialized niches. See, everybody wants to do what everybody is doing. So if you put yourself in a situation where you're entering into a market that everybody wants to do because it's less taxing, there's less involved, then what do you expect? What do you expect? Where is the demand shifted to? Here's the thing, running middle mile has changed a lot since the pandemic. What if a lot of trucking companies and retailers, how have they transitioned as far as logistics, getting their goods to their fulfillment centers and their warehouses? How have they transitioned, and why have they transitioned after the pandemic for the middle mile? Can anybody answer that question for me? We saw a change. We saw a change in the middle mile. So yes, capacity as far as supply, let me say, has increased, right? Due to an enormous amount of owner operators that came into the industry during the pandemic. And, a lot of those owner operators have, diminished, but that popularity still is there. You know what I'm saying? The people that came in due to the popularity that was presented during the pandemic, a lot of those entrants have failed. But the popularity is still there. The influence is still there. The influence that was created during the pandemic, you still see remnants of that on the internet. Those videos are still up. That content is still up. That content is not going anywhere. And people who didn't have the mindset to get in when they had that large lump sum of money at that time, those thoughts and, people that were in their inner circle that were taking their money that got in and failed, that thought is still lingering in their head. So now you have those people giving it a crack at it. You have people that entered and failed giving a second crack at it. You have a culture now where people don't want to work. We see it all the time on the call-in show. We see people that are already in established roles and established positions. We see people that are in trucking from a CDL perspective come up on my channel all the time and want to transition from a CDL semi-truck into a box truck. Everybody wants to go in that one direction. More people are buying things online, from essential goods to big and bulky furniture. The final mile industry, as far as the amount of opportunity over the next 4 to 10 years, is going to constantly increase. The more retailers that turn that same day, next day delivery switch on, the more opportunities that they're going to be. Not every retailer has converted over yet, but we see more and more and more converting over every single day. The answer that I was looking for is a lot of retailers and a lot of your mega carriers have invested more into intermodal. Why? Inflation, right, is one, right? Transportation cost gets passed along to the consumers. So how do we suppress raising the prices on consumers? What's one way we can suppress that so that we can still stay competitive? Different mode of transportation. It's cheaper to move things via intermodal than it is a truck. It takes longer, but it's cheaper. That's why you see companies like J.B. Hunt ordering more rail car containers. So now with overcapacity, oversupply that's still lingering, more people still coming in, the mode of transportation for middle miles, especially from your mega carriers, they're investing more in the intermodal. It's a cheaper form of transportation. And those savings get passed along to the consumers. Doesn't mean that the demand is still not there. The demand is there. It's just different. So when you come into an industry as an owner, you have to meet the needs of the business. You got to go where the money at. And no matter how many times I ask people, and these are, not the older guys, but when I talk to younger, guys that still have, or should still have good knees and good arms and good shoulders and good strength, everybody wants to do what they think is easy, which is this no-touch freight stuff that everybody talks about. And that's fine. But what we see is a level of understanding when it comes to that middle mile that a lot of people can't grasp. One of the main things is the costs that are associated with the understanding that you have to delay your gratification, the understanding that you constantly have to keep up with your operational costs and your cost per mile, the understanding that you're not going to get rich, the understanding that, you should know what your cost of living is prior to coming into this business, because you may be better off just staying where you're at your job, because you have to factor in sustaining the business. Sustaining the business is the priority more so than sustaining your lifestyle. Hit the like button. The demand is there. I see it every day. I see it in Final Mile. I see it in Final Mile every day. I see it in Curbside. I see it on the gig apps. Now, don't get it twisted. These sectors are competitive, and we see competition rising day by day. But the demand is there. What you're looking at is a normal logistics economy. Now, people always say, oh, well, can't wait till it goes back or rates go back. And then when you see me ask them, what does back look like? I've asked content creators. I've asked people that have come up on the channel. And either they don't know or they give me a time period during a period that we'll probably never see again in this lifetime. And even if we see another pandemic, what has history taught us? History has taught us that we learned from our mistakes. There were plenty of mistakes that were made during the last pandemic by the government. They won't never do what they did again. And if they do it, there's going to be processes and procedures that you're going to have to go through. They're not just going to make it as simple as they did the last time, because look at the results of them doing so. Look at what you're living through now. So it won't be as simple. That wasn't the first stimulus that I've been through in my lifetime. That was the most stimulus that I've seen presented to an economy in my lifetime. I think Bush gave out $700 back like in 06 or 07 From what I remember getting a $700 check, I think from Bush, and then Obama gave one when he came in. I think it was like $600 or $700. You just got it. From what I remember, if you paid taxes the previous year, you just got the check in the mail. You just got it in the mail. You had to do your taxes. They went off your previous year taxes. From my understanding, you just applied and they gave it to you. You got people that never even paid taxes. You got people that never had businesses that was running around getting 20, that was running around getting unemployment in a multitude of states. Which contributed to the spending, which contributed to the volume. The point of the stimulus was for people to spend money, in which they did. This is why you had the volume. You're not going to see that volume anymore. What you're seeing is normal. Well, Mark, what determines normal? Normal is determined by where the economy is. If we're in an economic downturn economy, then you're seeing what volume looks like when there's an economic downturn. When there's a normal economic upturn, let's say like 2016, 2017, 2018, you saw what normal volume looked like during that time period. The issue is a lot of the people that are saying these things on the internet from a content creator perspective hasn't had the experience. Now, there was a challenge to me about experience, but here's the thing. How can you determine what is and what isn't if you can only base your knowledge or your experience off the years that you've been operating? If the majority of your years come from a period where there was a pandemic and now you're seeing what normal looks like, how can you compare this normal to what normal was prior to the pandemic when you weren't operating prior to the pandemic? And when I say operating prior to the pandemic, I'm not talking about for a short time period. I'm talking about for an extended time where you can see different economical shifts, where you can see what an uptick looks like, when you can see what a downtick looks like. This isn't the first freight recession I've seen. It was a freight recession in 2019. A lot of the companies that used to deliver to me went out of business in 2019. New England Motor Freight was one of the companies that came to my warehouse a lot. They're not even in business no more. They got wiped out with the 2019 freight recession. So when people say, oh, now is not a right time, says who? If you're comparing it to 2021, 2020, first quarter going into the second quarter of 2022, you're never going to see that again. You're going to be waiting. You're going to be waiting till the cows come home because it's not going to happen. The demand is there. The competition level is higher due to some of the same people that are saying now is not a bad time or now is a bad time. But the freight is there. The opportunity is there. Are you set up? Is your business set up to be able to compete, to get the freight? Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, turn on all post notifications.